The stars died screaming. That's what it looked like when the Mars relay went dark. One moment, the crimson planet floated in the void, steady, silent, distant. The next, it was gone, not destroyed in a blaze of fire or swallowed by some cosmic anomaly. Just gone, ripped from the sky like a page torn from a book. 1 second, millions of lives flickered through the comm channels, and the next, silence. Commander Elias Stroud watched it happen from a reinforced command bunker buried under 3 miles of mountain rock in the Hindu Kush Range. The Earth's last orbital early warning system pinged red across the board. Then the moons fell silent too. Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, all gone. The bunker, once a mothballed Cold War relic repurposed for deep state emergencies, now hummed with barely controlled panic. Analysts barked over each other. Engineers scrambled between flickering consoles. The air reeked of stress, sweat, and ozone. Commander, barked Colonel Vanson, slamming a tablet onto the steel war table. We've lost LunaNet. Full blackout. They're burning through our outer defense rings. Elias didn't blink. He was a tall man, silver-streaked beard, one eye milky white from an old Jovian blade wound, the other sharp and unforgiving. His dark skin was marked with the scars of too many wars humanity had tried to forget. Wars fought not for land or resources, but survival. They're following the culling protocol, he said flatly. Just like what they did to the Creel. Burn the moons, collapse the gravity wells, isolate the target world. Total planetary encirclement. A young tech nearly dropped her data pad. Why you mean they're going to? Yes. Elias looked her dead in the eyes. They're going to sterilize Earth. For years, whispers about the Ashanter Dominion had swirled through the Interstellar Council, a race of techno-organic conquerors, infamous for reducing planetary civilizations to ash when resistance exceeded 18% on their probability charts. To them, defiance wasn't tolerated, it was studied, cataloged, and extinguished. And humanity had been defiant since its first encounter. Now, the hammer had fallen. The bunker trembled slightly. Shockwaves from orbital impacts. Multiple EMP signatures blinked across the holographic globe projection above the war table. Chicago, Paris, Kinshasa, Melbourne. Communications were collapsing faster than they could be rerouted. Patch me through to Global Military Net, Elias said, turning to the comms officer. It's failing, sir. We've only got uplink to a few hardline bases. NORAD, Eastern Bloc resilience nodes, maybe 1 or 2 undersea cables. Then I'll use what we have, Elias snapped. Give me sound. A low chime echoed through the room, and the old war room fell silent. A red hollow recording sphere hovered over the table, humming softly. Elias straightened his spine. This is Commander Elias Stroud, Earth Defense Continuity Command, speaking from Bunker Site 0. As of this transmission, Mars, Europa, and Luna have been neutralized. The Ashanter Dominion has begun full-spectrum planetary siege operations. Initial casualties are, he paused, jaw tightening, catastrophic. He locked eyes with the camera drone. Somewhere, someone might be listening. Somewhere, a mother might be clutching her child under a collapsing overpass. Somewhere, a soldier might be waiting for orders with a rifle and no direction. This is not a surrender, Elias said, voice deepening. This is not a retreat. This is our awakening. We are not an empire. We are not an advanced civilization by galactic standards. We are people, tenacious, vicious, brilliant, flawed people. And we have always fought like devils when we had nothing left to lose. He slammed a fist on the war table. They want us gone? Let them come. We will bleed them for every inch of ground. We will scream back at the stars. We will remind them what it means to challenge us. He leaned forward, voice lowering to a deadly growl. Earth stands. The transmission cut. No applause. No cheers. Just grim determination. Silence returned, until the first impact shook the mountain like the wrath of a god. Status, Elias shouted. Orbital debris strike. Shard-class kinetic lance. Direct hit on Islamabad sector. No signal from the capital grid, sir. It's gone. Elias felt something twist in his chest. That had been home. More tremors. Reports poured in. Reaver-class dropships in the skies above major population centers. The Reavers were living war machines, organic metal fused with alien hate, capable of rending skyscrapers apart with claws longer than a city bus. The command screen lit up red. Dozens, hundreds, thousands. A new voice crackled over a side channel. This is Captain Navarro of the Valkyrie's Claw. requesting emergency clearance for orbital breach run. We've got refugees, wounded, tech packets. They're not gonna make it unless we punch a hole now. Elias slammed a fist on the console. Do it. Anyone left up there with fuel and a working railgun, give her cover. All wings, retaliate on the Ashanter landing funnels. We hold the damn sky, or we die trying. Navarro's voice returned, grim and fierce. Humanity doesn't go quietly. You got that, Commander? I was born screaming, Elias replied. Now show them how we end. 3 hours later, Elias stood before a wall of flickering displays, arms folded, listening to the chaos unfold. The claw had punched through, barely, but at the cost of 3 defense cruisers. Berlin was burning. New York had gone dark. Mumbai was surrounded. But in every region, something unexpected was happening. The humans were fighting back. They weren't coordinated. Most weren't even trained. But they used their cities, their terrain, their madness. Civilians threw Molotovs from rooftops. Retired soldiers pulled rifles from under floorboards. Kids hacked comms towers with broken code. Drones once used for farming now dropped explosives on reaver heads. And the Ashanter, for all their superior firepower, hadn't expected the chaos, hadn't predicted the rage, the sheer feral defiance. They thought they would face a military. They found a species on fire. That night, Elias descended to the genetics vault under the bunker. Security was tight. Only he and 3 others had the biometrics to enter. Lights flickered overhead as tremors rumbled from distant impacts. Inside the vault, cryogenic chambers lined the walls. Within them, human experiments. Soldiers, too dangerous to be deployed. Augmented, unstable, powerful. One pod in particular pulsed with red light. Inside it floated Caravas. She was half machine, half vengeance, built for close-quarters warfare. Too brutal even for the Jovian front. Her eyes were closed, her heartbeat slow but steady. Elias stared at her for a long moment, then turned to the technician. Wake her up. The tech paled. Sir, she's not cleared for deployment. She hasn't spoken in years. She doesn't know the war is. She is the war now. Elias's voice was stone. They wanted to burn Earth. We'll show them what rises from the ashes. Back on the surface, the sky bled fire. Above, the first human fleet regrouped around Luna's ruins. Below, scattered resistance forces drew lines in the dirt, in the cities, in the bones of civilization. The scream had begun, but so had the answer. Not like in the history books, where firestorms rolled through old stone and rubble, but in waves of bioplasma and shrieking metallic horror. The city was unrecognizable. Towering spires of blackened bone metal jutted from the earth like tumors, remnants of reaver landings. Roads had melted, trams lay twisted. The famous Brandenburg Gate had been obliterated, replaced by a nesting pit where Ashanter reavers disgorged fresh war spawn every few hours. And through this hell's cape, humanity marched. Commander Elias Stroud crouched behind the crumbled wall of an ancient metro station, dust coating his exo-armor. Shattered glass crunched beneath his boots as he surveyed the street ahead through the smoke and fire. The reaver nest lay just 5 blocks east, directly in the heart of what used to be Berlin Mitte. Around him, his elite unit, Omega Red, prepared for war. Thermal readings confirm another clutch is birthing, said Sergeant Rafi, scanning with an optical drone. That's the 5th one today. They're breeding warforms faster than we can kill them. Then we kill them faster, Elias growled. Omega Red wasn't just a strike team. It was a myth. A whisper passed from dying platoons and bunker broadcasts. 6 humans in bleeding-edge exosuits, trained for infiltration, sabotage, and murder in the darkest corners of the war. They weren't the best because they were smarter or stronger, but because they refused to die. Hardpoint here, Elias ordered. Double-check your ammo. Engage cloaks. We ghost in, leave them bleeding, and vanish like we were never here. Private Lee, barely 19, tightened his grip on his carbon-forged autoblade. Sir, permission to speak freely? Granted. What if they're learning? Lee asked, eyes flicking toward the towering spire ahead. The Reavers. They're adapting to ambush tactics. We lost half our drop team in Paris because they knew where we'd hit. What if they figured us out? Elias looked at him, then slowly placed a hand on Lee's shoulder. Then we teach them the cost of learning too slow. Behind them, Caravas, recently reawakened from cryostasis, stood silently, her armor hissing with every breath. She hadn't spoken since her revival. Her face, half covered in neural interfacing ports, was unreadable, but her presence radiated violence. She didn't walk. She stalked. The assault began just before midnight. Cloaks activated. Sound dampeners engaged. Omega Red moved like phantoms through the charred skeleton of the city. Each member synced to the squad net, eyes glowing faint blue behind their visors. Automated turrets along the street flickered erratically, hacked by Juno, the sentient AI riding shotgun in the comms. Visual on Reaver Group, whispered Rafi. 3 drones, 1 juggernaut. Looks like a fresh batch. Unstable heat signatures. There's still acclimating to our atmosphere. Perfect, Elias replied. Let's ruin their morning. Kara moved first. She launched from the second floor of a ruined building like a missile, landing in the center of the Reaver patrol. Her twin chain blades roared to life, shrill, grinding death. She hacked the first drone apart in a geyser of black ichor, then spun low, taking the legs out from under the juggernaut. It screamed in ultrasonic rage, but Kara didn't stop. She jammed one blade into its throat node and twisted. The other team members surged in behind her. Lee lobbed an overcharged plasma charge into a side alley, roasting a secondary drone. Rafi sniped from above, dropping targets with surgical precision. The Reavers fought back, but Omega Red was chaos incarnate. They didn't hold the line. They shattered it. The engagement lasted 87 seconds. Afterward, the street fell silent again, littered with burning flesh and sparking limbs. Elias approached Kara as she cleaned her blades on a tattered flag once bearing the UN emblem. Efficient, he muttered. Kara looked up. Her eyes were glassy, far away. But she nodded once, the blood of monsters dripping from her armor. Target nest is less than 2 clicks out, said Rafi. But intel confirms 2 heavy Reavers guarding the birthing chamber. We'll need to hit them fast before they reinforce. Reinforcements are already coming. Juno's voice crackled in their ear comms. Orbital scans indicate 2 Dominion skiffs entering low Earth orbit. Estimated touchdown, 17 minutes. You need to strike now. Elias didn't hesitate. Go loud. The Omega Red assault on the nest was a symphony of death. Elias led the charge, crashing through debris like a thunderbolt, shotgun roaring. The heavy Reavers turned, snarling with their hive echo screeches, but they were too slow. Rafi nailed one through the eye with a rail spike. Lee was on the second before it could react, carving its spinal ridges apart with surgical fury. Then came the clutch chamber. It was alive, pulsating. Walls of translucent flesh stretched over scaffolding, birthing new Reavers in bubbling sacks. The stench was suffocating, rot, ozone, and steaming biometal. Elias felt bile rise in his throat. Burn it all. They deployed fuel charges and thermal gels across the chamber. As Kara moved to place the final detonation, she paused. Her visor locked on something behind a translucent wall. Small forms. Not Reavers. Children. Human. Captured. Cocooned. Alive. What is it? Elias asked. She didn't speak, just stared. Juno scanned the site. They're using them. Genetic grafting. Hybridization. Ishander are attempting to merge with human code. Rage exploded in Elias's gut. No. Not again. No more monsters made from our flesh. Free them? Lee asked, voice shaking. Kara didn't wait for orders. She raised her blade and sliced through the membrane, freeing the first child. The others followed, her hands surprisingly gentle. Elias turned to Rafi. Priority shift. Evac the kids. I'll finish this. No way, Commander, Rafi barked. We go together. But Kara shook her head. I'll stay. The room froze. It was the first thing she had said in years. Elias stepped toward her. You don't have to. I need to, she interrupted. They made me in fire. Let me return the favor. He met her eyes, once dead, now burning. Then he nodded. She turned away and knelt beside the thermal core, priming it. As the others evacuated with the children, she activated her internal fusion detonator. Her body began to glow from within. Elias looked back one last time. Kara met his gaze and smiled. Then the world exploded. The shockwave could be seen from orbit. The Reaver nest was gone, vaporized in a radius of 4 kilometers. The transmission of Kara's vitals ended with a soft hum. No scream, no signal, just silence. A moment of mourning passed. Then Elias turned to the team, now regrouped in a safe zone. You've seen what they're doing, he said. You've seen what they are, and you've seen what we're willing to become to stop them. This isn't a war for territory. This is a war for our soul. He turned toward a scorched Reaver skull half buried in the dirt. Let's make sure they remember that when they try again. Meanwhile, deep in the void, within the hollow core of the Ishander command vessel orbiting Saturn, an alien overmind received the transmission of Kara's detonation. It studied the data, calculated probabilities. A minor loss, statistically insignificant. Yet something new had appeared in the models. Human deviation curve had spiked. The overmind adjusted its calculations, added a new variable, unbreakable will, unknown outcome, further observation required. Then it did something no overmind had ever done in 1,000 conquered worlds. It hesitated. There was no sound in the vacuum of space, but aboard the Valkyrie's claw, it felt like the whole galaxy was screaming. The ship shuddered as another Ashander pulse beam clipped the starboard wing, melting half the plating and venting 2 corridors into the abyss. Alarms shrieked. Sparks danced across the command bridge like angry fireflies. Captain Leah Navarro didn't flinch. She gritted her teeth, one hand clamped to the armrest, the other gripping the throttle like it was the neck of an old enemy. "Come on, you bastard. Just a little further," she growled. Behind her, the bridge crew worked furiously. None of them were standard military. There were no polished boots or regulation codes. These were misfits, ex-smugglers, pirate lords, deserters, and spacers with more tattoos than sense. Navarro had personally handpicked every one of them not for their loyalty, but for their sheer refusal to die. And they were bleeding for her now. "All remaining aft engines rerouted to main drive," shouted Draco, her engineer, covered in grease and blood. "We blow this push, we won't have another." "Then make it count," she snapped. The Claw was running a suicide route, breaking through the Ashanter blockade and circling Earth to deliver critical cargo, biomed supplies, EMP-tuned explosives, an encrypted AI core, and nearly 4,000 civilians in cryostasis from the destroyed Europa outpost. They weren't soldiers. They were engineers, teachers, scientists. What was left of humanity's future? And the Dominion wanted them dead. The blockade was a noose. 3 cruisers and 1 command dreadnought, all pumping out gravity shears, plasma netting, and anti-fission mines. No one made it through. No one except the wolves. "Captain," shouted Shireen, her tactical officer, from the gunnery console. "The dreadnought is powering its spinal lance. 30 seconds to charge." Navarro's eyes flashed. "Then we'll give them something to regret." She hit the command mic. "All decks, this is your captain. We've flown through Hell's Gates and spit in the Devil's Eye. We've run from debt lords, outraced bounty hunters, and once stole a neutron star's core out from under a Shikar war priest. But this is what we were born for. This is our hunt." She leaned forward. "So you pick up your tools, grab your guns, and load every scrap of ordnance we've got. You aim for the throat. We are not prey. We are wolves. And the Dominion's about to learn what it means to corner one." The crew roared across the decks. The ship twisted into a flat dive, cutting toward a debris field left from Earth's first failed counteroffensive. It was a graveyard of twisted hulls, dead fighters, and shattered orbital platforms. Now a hunting ground. "Spooling stealth net," said Shireen, fingers flying. "Cycling to active cloak in 3, 2. The ship shimmered, briefly vanishing from standard scans. The enemy dreadnought hesitated, then adjusted trajectory. "They see us." "Partially," Navarro grinned. "Good. Let the bastards chase ghosts." Behind her, Draco had begun rigging the engine rooms with thermite bombs, not out of sabotage, but as a backup. "No one's taking this ship," he muttered. "She dies with us, or not at all." For 10 brutal minutes, the Claw danced through death. It threaded between wrecks at full burn, skimming the edge of gravitational traps and dodging rail lances by centimeters. Shireen worked the gunnery like a demon, sending guided flak into the blind spots of pursuing ships. Each hit didn't destroy, but it bought time, damaged their sensors, delayed their aim. Then the plan kicked in. "Now," Navarro shouted. Explosive charges planted days ago in the derelict wrecks surrounding the path detonated in a coordinated sequence. Dozens of ship husks turned into blazing shrapnel storms. The Claw dove through the fire, shield flares roaring. The pursuing Dominion cruiser caught the full brunt. It cracked in half. Its scream echoed across comms in unholy digital agony. The dreadnought recalculated. It knew this game now, but it was already too late. Navarro had led them directly into the trap she'd built for months, codenamed Operation Wolfsnare. Buried in the wreckage was the Icarus Lance, a decommissioned Earth orbital mass driver, stripped of power and written off as a lost relic. Until now, Draco had rerouted every auxiliary conduit from the Claw into the old gun. It took every last ounce of power left in their fusion cores. But when it lit up, the dreadnought paused. Then Navarro fired it. The mass driver spat a tungsten rod the size of a shuttle at 1/4 light speed. It didn't just hit the dreadnought. It punched through it, end to end, ripping a hole so wide the ship folded in on itself. Air, crew, and reactors bled into the void. A moment later, the secondary cores went critical. The dreadnought died in a nova. The comms were silent. No cheers, just static. Navarro slumped in her chair. Her ship was fried. Shields were gone. Engines were on fire. Hull integrity was holding by a miracle, but the blockade was broken. Earth was open. Captain, Shireen whispered. We did it. We actually did it. Navarro nodded. Get me Elias Stroud. It took minutes to find a viable frequency. When the connection stabilized, the commander's scarred face appeared on the cracked display. You're late, Elias said flatly. Navarro barked a laugh. Blame the dreadnought. Bastard tried to ruin my hair. You lost half your ship, but I kept all my crew, she replied. Elias smiled. A rare thing. You've just opened a corridor. Reinforcements are going to pour through that hole. We can start moving people. Equipment. Hit them where it hurts. Good, Navarro said, leaning back. Because I'm done running. It's time we started taking back what's ours. Elias's face darkened. We've confirmed hybridization experiments. Civilians are being used as breeding stock. Navarro's jaw clenched. Then we show them what humans do to monsters. Rest. You've earned it. Later, she said. I've still got teeth left. The signal cut. Down in the Claw's medical bay, among cryopods and dim flickering lights, a young child stirred. One of the survivors from Europa. Eyes fluttered open, pale green, confused. A medic leaned over. You're safe now, he whispered. You're back home. The child blinked. Outside, Earth rose in the viewport. Blue, wounded, but burning bright. But in the darkness beyond Jupiter's reach, a new Dominion commander took control. Unlike its predecessors, this one wasn't bred for logic. It was bred for rage. Born from the death of its twin, killed by the Claw's ambush, it swore retribution, not conquest, not strategy, annihilation. Its name pulsed across Ashanter relays. VKYR. It didn't care about probability models. It wanted to crush humanity's spirit, and it knew exactly where to strike next. New Alexandria had once been a symbol of rebirth. Carved into the West African highlands after the climate reclamation wars, it had risen from the ruins of old nations like a phoenix, clean, efficient, diverse, brilliant. Its spires had reflected golden sunlight. Its libraries reached both upward into skyscrapers and downward into data vaults the size of bunkers. It had been humanity's promise. We are better now. Now, it was a smoldering hell. Black spines of reaver nests split the skyline like the ribs of a dead god. The streets ran thick with melted concrete and plasma-scored bone. The great Solar Academy's central tower, once the beacon of Earth's post-war intellect, had been snapped in half like a twig and replaced with the Ashander beacon spire, pouring biocode into the atmosphere and broadcasting mind-warping frequencies designed to break resistance cells from within. The worst part wasn't the destruction. It was the silence. No birds, no chatter, no music, only the distant, rhythmic groans of birthing pits and the deep, mechanical hum of the Dominion war engines moving through the city's veins like cancer. And in that silence walked Sergeant Caravas, no longer chained to cryopods or military oversight, no longer bound by regulations or site clearance protocols. She was the last surviving berserker of Project Heracles, a ghost stitched together with pain, metal, and vengeance. And this was her war. The resistance cell in New Alexandria had been wiped out weeks ago, all except one, a girl, 11 years old, named Naya Kalu. She had escaped through storm drains and old maintenance tunnels, feeding on rat protein and rainwater. Every few nights she climbed to a different rooftop and activated an ancient beacon flare. Most burned out, but not all. Kara had seen the last flare from a recon drone dropped by the Valkyrie's Claw, and she came, dropped alone from high orbit in a blackened stealth pod. No orders, no backup, just a promise. Kara knelt in the shadows of the broken academy. Her armor was scorched and pitted from dozens of engagements. Her chain blades rested across her back, humming faintly. Blood, some hers, most not, crusted the seams of her gear. Naya crouched beside her, dirt smudged and hollow-eyed but alive. They took the others, Naya whispered. Everyone. They didn't even kill them right away. They tested them, hooked them up to wires, cut them open, and put things inside. Kara didn't speak. She only stared at the horizon where a Dominion transport tower loomed, the cradle node. It pulsed like a dying star, surrounded by security tendrils, autocannons, and heat storms. That's where the screams come from, Naya said. Kara's fingers flexed. Every instinct in her rewired nervous system screamed charge it. But this wasn't brute combat. It was infiltration, sabotage, extraction. A mission. The girl was priority, but so was revenge. Stay hidden, Kara finally said. Her voice was rough iron. I'll be back. Promise. Kara looked down at her. Once, long ago, she had been a child too. Right before the Gobi massacre. Right before the pain. I don't make promises I don't keep. Then she disappeared into the storm. The Cradle node was a nightmare of alien engineering, built directly on the foundation of the city's fusion power grid. It siphoned heat, light, and radiation into its own reproductive systems. Within its core, Reaver spawnlings were grown from hybrid DNA, half Dominion, half us. Kara entered through the undertunnels, crawling through sewer veins and forgotten aqueducts. The deeper she went, the hotter it became. Not temperature rage, memories, flashbacks. She remembered her first kill, a training room, a handler watching from behind glass. She was 10. The enemy was a clone. She broke its jaw, crushed its ribs, and tore out its throat with her teeth. They called it success. She called it birth. Inside the node, she found the labs, rows of humans strung up like puppets, needles in their brains, wombs grafted to machines, genetic templates being forcibly rewritten, and above them floated a figure wrapped in living code. A Shantar scion named Ichthalsa, biological administrator of the region, not a warrior, a butcher in a doctor's skin. Kara emerged like a demon from the floor. Chainblade screamed. The first 10 guards died before they turned. Alarms blared. Ichthalsa floated backward, its tendrils lashing at Kara with gravity whips and sound bursts. She didn't flinch. She charged straight into the pain, armor fracturing, skin tearing, but blade spinning. She cleaved its throne in half. You corrupt our bodies, she snarled, driving one blade deep into the scion's chest. Now let me show you ours aren't yours to own. With a twist and roar, she ended it. She didn't leave. Not yet. She freed every prisoner still breathing, crushed the pods, destroyed the samples, set every gestation vat on fire. And then she planted bombs, shaped thermals, acid grenades, resonance charges tuned to the node's power frequency. When she walked out, flames followed. Above the city, Dominion patrols scrambled. Fighters screamed through the air. Reavers mobilized toward the explosion, but it was too late. The node went critical, a miniature sun detonating in the heart of the city. Glass melted, buildings cracked, Reaver birthing centers failed, supply lines ruptured. A city that had died quietly was now screaming. And from the ashes walked Karavas, covered in soot and alien blood, with Naya in her arms. Elias Stroud watched the detonation feed from a remote satellite, lips pressed thin. Kara did this? Navarro asked beside him. She's the only one who could have. Navarro folded her arms. She's unstable. She's ours, Elias replied. And she just crippled their entire eastern offensive. The Reavers need that node to replicate. Without it, they're burning resources too fast. She bought us time. Navarro narrowed her eyes. What happens when we can't aim her anymore? Elias said nothing. Because the truth was, Kara wasn't a weapon anymore. She was something else now. A symbol. In the weeks that followed, the ruins of New Alexandria became something new. A rallying point. Survivors emerged from hiding. Resistance fighters regrouped. Kara's broadcast, captured via scavenged cameras, spread across the globe. This is Karavas. They took our homes. They took our friends. They took our bodies and tried to twist them. But we are not clay. We are iron and fire. And if they want to learn that again, I'll teach them. The Dominion recoiled. Earth wasn't going down easy. And in their infinite arrogance, the Ashantar had overlooked something fundamental. Conquest was about fear. But humans didn't fear pain. They were born in it. The enemy thinks in certainty. We think in chaos. They calculate. We improvise. They planned for resistance. They did not plan for us. Commander Elias Stroud. Titan had been dead for weeks. Not lifeless. No, that was too generous. It breathed, but not with air. With war. Where once stood the research colonies and the methane harvesting towers of the Saturn Initiative, now rose towering Dominion constructs, sprawls of organic steel, bristling with defensive membranes and resonance pylons. Every inch of Titan's surface had been repurposed into a birthing ground, a forward command, a cathedral to conquest. Titan was the Dominion's eye watching Earth, directing Reaver movements, predicting strikes with terrifying precision. The hive intelligence that coordinated the galactic slaughter, the one called Karzul, nested here, its vast neural matrix deep within the moon's crust. Humanity's orbital telescopes had caught glimpses of it, a structure like a black heart, pulsing with alien code, the size of a small city. It had to be destroyed, and Elias Stroud had come to do it himself. The shuttle rocked violently as it descended into Titan's thin, haze-choked atmosphere. Anti-air plasma raked the sky around it, filling the dark clouds with blood-orange fire. Elias braced against the hull, eyes scanning the instruments while the hull screamed under pressure. 15 seconds, shouted the pilot, a scar-faced woman named Rin who once flew drugs through Neptune's storms. If we live through this, I'm drinking everything that burns. Elias smirked grimly. If we die, the Dominion won't be around to toast us. Behind him, the strike team made ready. 10 soldiers, veterans all. Among them were Major Ortega, demolitions expert, missing half her jaw, and still chewed cigars. Rook, a cyber hacker with spinal augments and a sniper rifle nearly as long as she was tall. And Juno, the AI forged from Earth's last supercomputer, embedded into Elias's neural uplink, a ghost in his mind, her voice calm and clinical. This is suicide, Elias, Juno said. You understand that? Of course it is, he replied. But if we don't kill the hive, Earth won't get another shot. And if you die, my primary uplink dies with you. Guess you'd better keep me alive then. They crashed hard, controlled, but barely. The shuttle skidded across Titan's frozen plains, landing in a thundering spray of ice and slush. The team disembarked immediately, diving for cover behind ice ridges as Reaver skirmish patrols moved in. The air on Titan was too thin to breathe, too caustic to endure without full armor seals. The team's visors gleamed in the darkness as they advanced through the alien terrain, moving low and fast. Juno, Elias whispered. Where's the breach? Southwest quadrant. A maintenance vent tied into the hive's internal systems. Dominion engineers don't expect frontal assaults here. It's too unstable. Good. The battle began 20 minutes in. Reaver guards spotted them near a ruined methane processing station. The aliens came like nightmares, six-legged beasts with eyes like molten glass and jaws that split vertically. They leapt across terrain with horrifying speed, their screams vibrating through the ice. Open fire, Ortega bellowed. Gunfire tore through the night. Rook's rail rounds popped heads like balloons. Elias moved through the chaos like a reaper, his shotgun thundering and plasma blade flashing. One Reaver slammed into him. He countered by shoving a grenade down its throat and kicking it into its friends. They didn't just survive the ambush. They made it art. By hour 2, they reached the hive's outer edge. The terrain changed. Ice gave way to metal. They descended into the breach Juno had mapped, through twisting tunnels of living steel and alien veins. Every surface pulsed with power. The walls seemed to breathe. The hive wasn't a building. It was alive. Juno's voice returned, more distant now. Something's wrong. I'm getting resistance across my signals. There's interference. Like another mind is pushing back. Can you isolate it? Elias asked. Not yet, but I can feel it watching us. The deeper they went, the less physics made sense. Gravity fluctuated. Sound distorted. Sometimes, the air itself felt like it was listening. Rook went silent for 5 minutes, staring at a wall that wasn't there. Ortega had to slap her out of it. Don't trust your eyes, Elias warned. This place is trying to think us apart. That's when they found the central chamber. It was a sphere hundreds of meters across, filled with swirling, glowing filaments. At the center floated Karzul, a mass of neural tissue and black glass, held aloft by tendrils of pure gravitational force. It had no face, no voice, but it spoke not in words, but pressure. Elias felt it enter his mind like a knife. You are disorder. You are decay. You delay the inevitable. Good. Elias hissed aloud. Then we're doing our job. The final assault was chaos incarnate. Defense drones erupted from the floor, spiked serpents and spinning blade swarms. The team fought in tight formation, guns flaring, grenades blazing. Ortega dove into the central conduit, planting shaped nuclear charges beneath the hive core. A drone nearly decapitated Rook before Elias skewered it with his blade. Get it done. Elias shouted. I need more time. Ortega shouted back. Juno whispered. I can buy you some, but you're not going to like it. What's the cost? My core. All stored data. If I crosslink into the hive, I can collapse it from the inside, but I won't survive. Elias froze. Juno. No, you said this was our last shot. He wanted to argue, to scream, but he knew she was right. Do it. As Juno entered the hive's code structure, the walls began to tremble. Sparks of alien language rippled across every surface. Karzul convulsed, its tendrils writhing violently. Screeches echoed across every corridor as Dominion systems panicked. The hive was no longer in control. Juno was inside it. Ortega screamed. Charges planted. Elias pulled her out just as the timer began. Fall back. Full sprint. The team ran, sprinting through collapsing tunnels, ducking falling debris and erupting flame. Rook carried Ortega. Elias took point. Behind them, Karzul let out a psychic scream so loud it made their ears bleed through sealed helmets. They made it to the surface with 12 seconds to spare. The explosion wasn't fire. It was unmaking. The hive core collapsed inward, folding space around itself like crumpled tin foil. Light bent. Matter cracked. A shockwave of pure chaos spread across Titan's surface, ripping apart Dominion structures, towers, and war engines. The moon trembled, then fell silent. Back on Earth, sensors across the solar system lit up like fireworks. Navarro's fleet picked up the signals first. Titan's gone, she whispered. Gone? Asked the comms officer. Not destroyed. Fallen. Their hive's dead. We've severed their command link. On every front, Dominion units hesitated. Some went berserk. Others shut down. Coordination failed. It was the break humanity needed, and it had come at a cost. In the aftermath, search and rescue drones recovered 4 of the original team. Elias was found half buried in snow, armor cracked, unconscious but breathing. When he awoke days later, he stared silently at the ceiling of the med bay aboard the Valkyrie's Claw. Navarro sat beside him. She's gone, Elias said. Yes, Navarro replied, but she took it with her. Elias nodded slowly. She gave us a chance. A chance to win, Navarro said. Elias turned his head. No, a chance to end this. In the ruins of Titan, among broken cables and shattered alien bone, a tiny spark of blue light flickered in the snow. Juno's last data fragment. Still alive, still watching, waiting. We drew the line in blood, not to keep the enemy out, but to remind ourselves that here we stand, and we do not move. Major Ortega, Siege of the Ossuary Hills. The Dominion was reeling. With Titan's hive core obliterated and Karzul dead, their command matrix fractured. Reaver legions across Earth and the solar front began to stutter, slow, and collapse into chaos. But chaos breeds monsters, and the Ashanter still had one weapon left. Viquire, born from grief, forged in vengeance. Not a strategic mind, but a wrathful one. It didn't want to win the war. It wanted to bury Earth beneath so many bodies the stars would forget we ever existed. It began with Central Eurasia, what was once the United Red Zone defensive belt, a stretch of fortified human territory across Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and western China was hit by a planetary-scale reaver migration. Not fleets, not drop pods, just millions of them. No air cover, no retreat, no subtlety, just raw, screaming death, flowing like a tsunami of claws and metal. Every AI predicted humanity would fold within a week, but they didn't know about the bone line. The Ossuary Hills, named for the countless dead buried beneath its ice-encrusted peaks, marked the last stronghold between the Reaver swarm and the Allied Command Corps in Ulaanbaatar. It wasn't a fortress. It was a trench, 600 kilometers long, dug by hand and machine, manned by whatever survivors remained. There were no backup units, no exfil plans. The orders were clear. Hold the line, or die on it. Major Ortega stood atop Hill 39, chain-smoking as the sun broke over the jagged skyline. Her body was wrapped in patchwork armor, scorched from Titan, freshly wired with neural relays for faster targeting. She hadn't slept in 51 hours. Behind her, a ragtag force dug deeper into the blood-crusted ice. Veterans from New Alexandria, haunted but hardened. Civilians turned riflemen, taught in 6-hour crash courses. 2 sentient construction mechs, now mounting plasma cannons instead of cranes. And one boy, age 14, who hadn't spoken since his family was torn apart in the last retreat. They called him Ghost. He sniped Reavers with eerie calm. The bone line was all that stood between Earth and extermination. Status? Ortega asked, her voice like crushed gravel. A comms runner, barely old enough to shave, handed her a cracked tablet. Reavers crossed into strike radius last night. For swarms, potentially 7. Seismic detectors picking up underground movement. They're tunneling beneath the ridge. Ortega snorted. Desperate bastards. Captain Leon Navarro's fleet says they'll try to break through the orbital kill nets again. But even if they do, it'll take another 72 hours to get heavy armor here. We'll be dead in 36. Yes, ma'am. She lit another cigar. Then we make the next 36 a living nightmare. By midday, the horizon howled. A sound like broken glass being scraped across bone echoed from every direction. The reavers didn't approach in orderly formations now. They came in rivers, bodies climbing over bodies, bleeding from mouths that weren't mouths, clawing at the ground to reach the humans they so desperately wanted to butcher. Ortega stood tall. All units, sound the horn. A guttural, ancient sound blasted from the trenches, a hybrid fusion of Mongolian war chant and low-frequency sonic disruptors. It wasn't just to announce readiness. It was to remind the men who they were. The first wave hit like a sledgehammer. Reavers poured over the ridge, leaping from craters, emerging from ice tunnels, spitting acid and plasma. Auto turrets opened up. Mines exploded. Men screamed. Mechs roared and fired, turning hordes into paste. But still they came. Ortega moved like fury incarnate, flinging EMP grenades into swarms, dual-wielding magnetic repeaters. She leapt onto a reaver juggernaut, jammed her knife into its optic socket, and fired a plasma charge into its skull point blank. Her armor cracked. Her bones did too. She didn't care. The bone line held for 10 hours. Then, around midnight, HFY arrived. Not in a ship, not as a hologram, but in flesh. A massive, 12-meter-tall creature, stitched from the corpses of failed generals and human prisoners. Its limbs were living blades. Its torso bore the skulls of those it had executed. It had no eyes, just a face of writhing tendrils and ash. When it roared, soldiers dropped their weapons and wept. Ghost didn't. He fired a round straight into its chest. It bounced off. The beast turned toward Hill 39. Ortega met it head-on. The battle became a myth. They would call it the Dusk Slaughter in war songs later. Ortega emptied her clips into HFY's chest, then charged it, screaming something incoherent. The Reaver King caught her midair and tried to crush her, but Ortega triggered her spinal detonator, a last resort implant from her Titan mission. The resulting explosion blew HFY back 20 meters and took most of Ortega's torso with it. She didn't scream. She laughed, still standing. "You ugly bastard." She didn't die immediately. Half her face gone, bleeding from every hole, she crawled to the comm station on her elbows and teeth. With failing fingers, she activated the distress beacon, not to retreat, but to taunt them, to tell Earth that the bone line still stood, to tell the Dominion, "You didn't break us." Then she finally closed her eyes. Across the battlefield, humans who had seen their commander explode in the face of death roared with renewed rage. Something shifted. A scavenged Goliath mech, left half-buried and inert for months, reactivated. A pilotless override sequence engaged. Ancient Earth programming from the AI war flickered awake. The mech's blue eyes flared. It moved. It charged. From orbit, Navarro watched the feed with shaking hands. "Are they still holding?" she asked. The officer nodded. "Bone line hasn't moved. They're surrounded, but they're not retreating." Navarro's lips tightened. "Then we go." "You mean?" "I mean we drop everything we've got. Every gun, every walker, every veteran. We land on the bone line, and we push back. But the orbital net, I don't care." The bone line held. Now we return the favor. The final act of Chapter 6 unfolds with drop pods falling from the sky like thunder. Elias Stroud personally landing in the trench, dragging bodies out of the dirt, rallying what's left. Caravas emerging from the shadows again, blood-slicked, limping, but alive, her voice hoarse as she screams. We hold, and Earth listens. Across continents, radios crackle with the same message. We hold, we hold, we hold the bone line. In the Dominion war chambers, silence reigns. Even HFY, wounded but alive, hesitates, because he has seen it now. The bone line is not a place. It is a people, and they are not afraid. We do not inherit victory. We steal it from the jaws of extinction. Captain Lien Navarro, Order Number 88. Full burn assault doctrine. They said Earth had 7 hours left. After the fall of Titan in the slaughter at the bone line, the Dominion's remaining forces, fractured but bloodthirsty, went berserk. Half-sentient Reaver battalions surged through every broken gap in the planetary defense grid. Skywatch went dark in 28 countries. Dozens of orbital satellites were devoured or hacked by Ashanter code worms. The Dominion wasn't playing chess anymore. It was playing Russian roulette with the entire species. But there was one plan left. Not defensive, not diplomatic, not strategic, cataclysmic. The Black Sky Offensive. The meeting took place aboard the Valkyrie's Claw, hovering in low orbit over the Pacific warfront. The battered bridge smelled of ozone and iron. Sparks flickered from overloaded terminals. Every screen bled red warnings. But inside, war's survivors gathered. What was left of Earth's best? Captain Leon Navarro stood at the head of the table, black combat armor half-strapped on, blood staining her hands. Elias Stroud sat to her right, his jaw wired shut after Titan, communicating via neural relay. Across from him was Caravas, a walking wound in armor, arms crossed, eyes burning with barely restrained fury. Beside her, Colonel Wasim of the South Asian Resistance, Rook, sniper-turned-ghost, and Commander Shireen, last officer of the now-lost Lunar Division. No one spoke until Navarro slammed a data pad on the table. Operation Skyfall failed. Una's orbital fleet's gone. Africa's shadow grid is blind. If the Reavers take Australasia, we're encircled. Silence. Then Kara said flatly, "Then we take something from them instead." A flicker of a smile from Navarro. "I was hoping you'd say that." The plan was madness. Launch a full planetary-scale assault on the Dominion's high lattice, the orbital infrastructure web the Ashander had constructed around Earth's equator, originally built to suppress radio signals, block reinforcements, and anchor their atmospheric disruptors. That lattice was now vulnerable. Titan's hive core had been its brain. Without it, it ran on backup command routines, slow, reactionary, brute force. This was the only chance humanity would get to shatter the sky, and humanity intended to do it in style. The first strike came just before dawn over the Indian Ocean. From the submerged vaults of the former Jakarta Defense Ring, 3 ancient pre-cataclysm rail cannons, buried and long forgotten, were reactivated. Their targeting systems were primitive, but their payloads were nuclear-grade rods of tungsten forged for this very apocalypse. With the words, "For every city they burned," Commander Wasim pressed the fire button. The rods screamed into the sky at Mach 25, trailing burning atmosphere. They struck the lattice's southern arc, and it shattered, not just structurally, symbolically. For the first time since Earth fell, the sky bled alien fire. That was the signal. All across the planet, human vessels, military, civilian, stolen, retrofitted, launched upward. Navarro's Valkyrie's claw led the charge, bursting through low orbit in a trail of plasma and screams. Flanking her were the Night Shrike, an old freighter-turned-gunship, crewed by ex-convicts. The Unity, a mobile hospital-turned-assault barge, its red cross repainted as a charging lion. Ashwing, an AI-guided stealth corvette built from stolen Dominion parts, now surgically striking node relays. Behind them, hundreds of smaller craft launched like a swarm of hornets. Not all of them would make it, but they would bite. The battle for the black sky wasn't fought on one front. It was a three-dimensional battlefield of dizzying speed and impossible physics. Fighters banked through molten debris fields. Plasma cannons howled across magnetic corridors. Chainsabers sparked in zero-G boarding assaults. And humans, angry, desperate, brilliantly mad humans, kept charging. Elias, aboard a customized dropship named No Mercy, led a boarding squad into one of the largest lattice anchors, Node Helix Theta. The structure rotated at 600 RPM and was guarded by a dozen Reaver slicers, beasts designed for zero-G melee. Elias didn't care. He activated his exoframe, depressurized the cabin, and launched himself through open vacuum with a monofilament blade in each hand. He didn't even slow down when he hit the first slicer. He just cut. Kara had her own target, the core engine node, the lattice's primary power spine. She and a team of zero-G breaches used repulsor packs to ride asteroid fragments into the structure, dodging flak fire and skimming death. Once aboard, Kara didn't waste time with subtlety. She turned the corridors into slaughterhouses, every step a pile of broken limbs and scorched hull. A Reaver warbrute nearly crushed her. She headbutted, then stabbed her blade through its eye. Behind her, her team laid demolition charges with surgical precision. They didn't want to just kill the node. They wanted it to fall like a burning god. Meanwhile, Navarro was in the heart of hell. The claw punched through a Dominion defense phalanx near the equatorial arc. It was surrounded within seconds, spike mines, boarding cables, harpoon lances. She locked the helm, handed control to the AI, and marched to the hangar. Her crew, those still breathing, assembled without words. She grabbed her gun. "We're not going down," she said. "We're going through." They opened the bay and jumped into the dark, into chaos. The fighting stretched for hours. On Earth, people watched the sky light up with alien fire. Children held radios to their chests. Old men wept. Mothers whispered stories of better days. And in orbit, above that fragile planet, humans fought like demons. They weren't supposed to win. They weren't designed to fight in space. They weren't supposed to survive. But they did, because nothing in the Dominion's databanks accounted for what humans did when backed into a corner. The climax came when the Lattice over Mind, a fragmented AI derived from Karzul's remains, attempted to purge the entire sky grid. It activated Failstate Omega, a protocol designed to ignite every power core in the Lattice at once, creating a ring of orbital fire that would incinerate half the Earth's atmosphere and sterilize the surface. A final scorched star protocol. Juno's surviving fragment, recovered from Titan and hastily integrated into Ashwing, sensed it. She screamed across the network. Override in progress. I can stop it, but I'll burn everything else in me to do it. Navarro gave no hesitation. Do it. Juno fought the Lattice AI like a virus with a grudge. She broke code that had never been cracked, wove ancient human languages into false triggers, looped fear simulations back at the Dominion's own logic trees. And at the final moment, she locked the detonation protocol into an infinite loop. The Lattice over Mind screamed in binary agony, then went dark. Elias's team finished planting the last explosives. Kara's detonation charges synced. The order was given. Detonate. The black sky broke. The Lattice fell. Massive burning fragments of alien steel crashed into the ocean, into deserts, into dead zones long abandoned. Others vaporized in low orbit. The night sky over Earth turned orange, then red, then clean. Human ships limped home. Not all returned. Many were vaporized. Others lost in debris. But those who lived, they had done the impossible. They had ripped the enemy's grip from the heavens, and the stars were theirs again. On the bridge of the Claw, Navarro stood bleeding and broken. Status, she croaked. Sky's ours, said Rook, cradling a wounded comrade. For now, Elias limped in. Was it worth it? Navarro looked at the stars above. Clear. Empty. Ask me when we win. Far away, deep in the void, Dominion High Command received the data burst. Earth has destroyed the black sky. The Lattice is gone. A new voice emerged. A new kind of Ashaner. Smarter, colder, and it whispered, begin the final doctrine. Oh, you think the war ends with a broken sky? No. That was just the prologue. Now comes the part where we show them what it means to bleed. Caravas. The sky was finally ours. But it wasn't enough. After the Black Sky Offensive shattered the Dominion's orbital lattice and severed their grip on the upper atmosphere, Earth tasted its first true breath of freedom in nearly 2 years. The clouds above were no longer poisoned with biosignal storms. Satellites flickered back to life. Debris fields rained down over the Pacific in molten arcs. For the first time in too long, Earth's people looked up and saw hope. But in the darkness between stars, something stirred. Something older. Something worse. The Dominion hadn't lost. They'd simply opened their final hand. And with it came the final doctrine. 3 days after the Black Sky Offensive, a long-range sensor station on Phobos stopped transmitting. Then the listening posts on the moons of Neptune. Then Europa. Then Io. One by one, the outer solar net went dark. But they didn't go silent. Before each station vanished, they transmitted a single image. A shadow. It moved like a fleet, but it wasn't. It was too big, too slow. It wasn't traveling across space. It was moving space around it. A mass of alien structures tethered by glowing chains of black light. Planetoids pulled into formation. Hypergravity war rings spinning like blades. And at the center, something that defied physics. A lattice of living bone 1,000 kilometers wide, encasing a red dwarf star as a heart. The Ashanter called it Thuldan, the last voice. Their apocalypse ship. Their god machine, and it was headed straight for Earth. Captain Leon Navarro stared at the images in silence. The command center aboard the Valkyrie's Claw was quiet, too quiet. Most of the officers were too stunned to speak. They built it in dark space, whispered Lieutenant Sumari, beyond gravitational range. No one ever saw it because it didn't exist until they needed it. It's not just a ship, said Elias Stroud, his jaw still half-wired shut. It's a doctrine. Navarro nodded grimly. The final doctrine. Total planetary reset. No assimilation. No conquest. Just erasure. They don't care if they win anymore. Caravas growled, arms folded, fresh scars across her cheek. They just want us gone. Rook, leaning on a railgun, chimed in. What's it armed with? Navarro turned toward the screen. Everything. Thuldan would arrive in 96 hours. Every simulation said the same thing. There was no way to destroy it once it reached firing range. Its primary weapon wasn't a cannon. It was a controlled singularity seeded with temporal entropy, a weapon that unmade probability itself. It didn't kill you. It erased the fact that you had ever been born. The AI consensus gave Earth a 0.06% chance of survival if it entered low orbit. That meant there was only one option left: intercept it. In deep space, with everything we had left, the counteroffensive was dubbed Operation Eclipse Breaker. A fleet was assembled, patched together from every remaining ship in Earth's arsenal. The Valkyrie's Claw, now the flagship. The Ash-Wing, guided by what little remained of Juno's mind. Civilian ships retrofitted with kinetic spikes. Massive asteroid haulers loaded with experimental antimatter torpedoes. The Last Symphony, an orbital gunship housing an entire choir of telepathic war oracles who sang tactical probabilities into AI systems. And the Deliverance, a repurposed colony arc armed with grav lances and modified fusion ramps. It was meant to start new worlds. Now, it was going to try to save one. Elias would lead the mission. Kara insisted on going. Navarro stayed behind to prepare Earth's final defense in case they failed. No one expected to return. The fleet launched in silence, rising through the scorched upper atmosphere with thrumming engines and cold resolve. Earth watched. Billions tuned in through revived signal networks. Children held breath. Old warriors saluted. Lovers wept. The last great human armada pierced the void, heading straight into the jaws of annihilation. They called it the Midnight Run. The approach was harrowing. Thuldan did not react like a ship. It reacted like a mind. It sensed them. As Earth's fleet reached the Kuiper Drift, time itself began to bend. Signals distorted. Memories bled into static. The stars shifted in ways they shouldn't. Inside the command chamber of the Claw, Kara clutched her head. It's whispering. Juno's fragment activated in Elias's neural uplink. It's not speaking to you. It's speaking through you. What's it saying? Elias gritted his teeth. That were insects. And it's here to wipe the smear off the glass. The battle began with light. Massive beams of red plasma carved arcs across the void. Human ships weaved through them like dancers on fire. Kinetic rounds punched into the superstructure of the Apocalypse ship, but it didn't bleed. It absorbed. Every kill strike was countered by a reaction. Time flickers. Weapon fire reversed. Hulls that were whole now split open like fruit. Elias made the call. We hit the star. Everything else is armor. That red dwarf in its heart? That's its soul. Juno responded. Confirmed. Her star is partially stabilized by quantum shackles. Disable them, and it collapses in on itself. Then that's the plan. Getting to the star was suicide. The outer layers of Thuldan were a maze of gravitational waves, bone hulls, and reflexive AI weapons, driven by ghosts of prior hive minds. The ship learned as it fought, and it had fought thousands of wars before. The Ashwing carved a path through the outer shell, dropping fusion mines and decoy drones. Kara and her breacher unit followed close behind, launching themselves into artificial gravity pockets, breaking through living tunnels with brute force. Inside, the ship was alive, and it hated them. Reaver forms stitched into walls screamed silently. The air was wrong. The walls pulsed. Time stuttered, but Kara pushed through. She fought with fury, her blades spinning through impossible physics, screaming defiance at a god. Meanwhile, Elias led a wing of grav lancers toward the core. The red dwarf beat like a heart inside a bone cathedral. Shackles of dark energy wrapped around it, pulsing with ruin. 3 lancers were destroyed instantly. 2 more folded into nothing. But Elias? He flew straight into the corona. The ship shook as he fired the first grav piercer, drilled into the shackle junction. The dwarf shrieked. One more. Juno whispered. Last one needs a human key. Manual. Elias didn't hesitate. He opened the launch bay and jumped. Kara saw him fall from the command platform high above. For 1 second, just one, her mask cracked. Then she ran. Elias hit the shackle terminal with one working arm and a mouthful of blood. He keyed in the codes. A countdown started. 10 seconds. 9. Then a scream. A Reaver priest descended from the ceiling, 6 arms, a crown of bone, and a blade like a scythe forged from black holes. It lunged, and Kara arrived. She didn't speak. She just fought. They crashed into the priest, blades slashing, blood flying. Elias keyed in the final sequence. Juno, I'm here. Shut it down. The dwarf heart collapsed. The moment the shackles dropped, the star inside the ship imploded, dragging matter inward. The Reaver priest roared and vaporized. The bone walls cracked. Thuldan screamed a final scream, not from fear, but rage. And then silence. The human fleet limped away, engines shattered, hulls torn, thousands dead. But Earth lived. The sky was clear, and the God machine was gone. Back on Earth, Navarro stood at the edge of the recovery bay as the first returning vessels broke atmosphere. She watched the wounded ships descend, trailing fire and glory. Then she smiled. They did it. 3 days later, Kara Voss awoke in a medical bay. Half her ribs were replaced, her lungs rebuilt, one eye gone. Elias sat beside her, arm in a sling, coughing. She blinked. The star. Dead. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Good." On the outskirts of the solar system, among the drifting bones of Thuldan, something stirred. A whisper. Not Dominion, not human, something new. But that was a problem for another day, because for now, Earth stood, and the stars belonged to us again. We didn't survive just to rebuild. We survived to remind the stars why they should fear the dark between us. Elias Stroud, Commander, Second Solar Offensive. The sky was silent, not the terrified, burning silence that followed the Black Sky Offensive or the stuttering, disoriented silence after Thuldan collapsed into a dying dwarf star. No, this silence felt final, like the pause before something ancient exhaled, before a storm remembered how to scream. Earth stood free again, but freedom didn't mean peace. Not yet. 2 weeks had passed since the annihilation of the Dominion's final doctrine weapon. In orbit, scorched metal and shattered bones still drifted in weightless graveyards. Earth's moon bore new scars, entire ranges scorched black by fragmentary fallout. But groundside, the rebuilding had already begun. Relays hummed, rations dropped from gunship bellies. Scavenger crews dragged Dominion husks out of smoking cities and melted trench lines. The world, bruised, bloodied, furious, was still spinning. But there was one truth all surviving commanders knew. The war wasn't over, not until humanity made it so. On the plains of New Siberia, once a Dominion forward operating zone, and now a massive open graveyard, Commander Elias Stroud stood overlooking launch site Alpha 10. Behind him, storm gray banners whipped in the wind, torn cloth marked with the sigils of the Earth Unity Forces, Resistance Cells, African Vanguard, Pan-Pacific Firewatch, and more. Below, the ground teams were assembling what had once only existed in concept files and emergency black projects. Operation Titan's Roar. A full planetary counteroffensive. No more hiding, no more waiting. Earth was going to take the war to the stars and burn the Dominion's homeworld to ash. Navarro walked up behind him, her uniform rethreaded, her left arm still in an exoskeletal brace from her own landing injuries. She handed Elias a data pad. New intel. Elias took it without a word, scanning through data projections, fleet movement, Dominion distress signals, scattered Reaver fragments. "They're cornered," Navarro said, her voice low. "Without a hive mind to rally around, they're splitting into tribes. Some are going feral. Others are consolidating around an old signal, something buried deep beyond the Orion barrier." Elias squinted. "Another hive? Worse. A seed. Something they planted before even reaching our system. A fallback. They're rallying to it. And if they grow another hive from it, they come back." He exhaled sharply. "Then we don't let them." Navarro grinned. "Glad you're still in a fightin' mood. I'm just getting warmed up." Below them, the Second Solar Offensive Task Force, comprised of war-ravaged survivors and newly armed civilians, drilled under blood-orange skies. Former miners now wielded exodrills retrofitted into shock lances. Engineers operated jury-rigged Reaver walkers, reprogrammed to target Dominion life signatures. The children of burned cities now flew drones overhead, painting targets in silence. Among them, Kara Voss paced like a wolf off the leash. Her armor was scorched black and welded shut around her left shoulder where Reaver toxin had tried to eat through her collarbone. She carried a new weapon, a curved, serrated vibroblade forged from Dominion bone alloy. They called it Hellsteel because it screamed every time it struck something living. In the main armory tent, Kara met up with Rook, who now had a synthetic left arm and a 1,000-yard stare that never softened. The sniper was loading high-velocity rounds into a carbon case rifle the length of a small hoverbike. "You good?" Kara asked, voice low. Rook didn't answer for a long moment. Then, "Better when I'm killing something. That time's coming." Rook looked over at the launch bay scaffolds. "I hope so, because I've still got a bullet for the one who melted Soul." Kara tilted her head. "That's a long list. I don't mind working through it." Inside the engineering dome, Juno's last fragment, patched into a stationary quantum core, flared to life as Elias entered. Her voice was fainter now, more fragmented, like echoes in a cathedral. Elias, you're late. Again, you're still lecturing me from the afterlife? Consider it a deeply embedded subroutine. I've analyzed the Reaver fallback pattern. If we launch within the next 20 hours, we can intercept them before they fully consolidate. But we won't be fighting a fleet. What then? A temple, built into the asteroid field beyond Elterex. It's more than a stronghold. It's a birthing site. They're trying to regrow the hive. Elias' eyes darkened. Not on my watch. Hours later, the War Council assembled beneath the reconstructed dome of Earth's last orbital dry dock, codenamed Iron Halo. Navarro, Elias, Kara, Rook, and 12 other planetary military leaders stood around a burning schematic of the target system. The asteroid is called Xerxes V, Navarro began. Uninhabited, cold, but now swarming with Dominion remnants. They've rooted in deep, using void pressure caverns to breed new forms. Intel confirms incubation vats and lattice mind binders growing at exponential rates. Elias spoke next, voice like steel dragged across gravel. We breach. We burn it to the bedrock. Kara nodded. This isn't a rescue mission. No, Navarro agreed. This is a mass execution. Silence fell. Then, unanimous agreement. The fleet launched under a red aurora, the last bleed of Thuldan's entropy arc mixing with Earth's magnetic field. The site was biblical. 15 warships, hundreds of atmospheric drop pods, a payload of nukes and plasma-laced hellfire, so dense it had to be stored in magnetized coffins. Each pod carried a quote stenciled on its hull. Most popular among them, "We are the fire." The journey to Xerxes V took only 8 hours. The Dominion sensed them coming and responded like a wounded god. Biomines detonated as soon as the fleet hit high orbit. A storm of acid spores and fragmented weapon satellites turned the outer approach into a meat grinder. Drop pods flared like meteors, some burning up before they could hit ground. Elias's pod hit the surface at 3,000 meters per second. He stood up mid-impact, his shock harness shattering behind him. Outside, the asteroid was a landscape of frozen death, twisting towers of black ice, vast canyons lined with high flesh, and screams echoing through vacuum. Kara dropped next to him, already firing into a swarm of scuttling bioforms. "Subtle landing," she muttered. "Never was my style." The battle for Xerxes V was the most vicious engagement since Titan. Dominion remnants had become unpredictable, Reaver forms fusing together, creating nightmares with limbs like plasma and bones of metal. They fought with no fear, no command chain, just rage. And humanity gave it back in full. Navarro's air cavalry strafed canyon spires, blasting birthing pits into molten slag. Rook climbed the broken hull of a crashed cruiser and began executing command drones with single shots from 2 kilometers away. Kara led a strike team into the deepest sanctum of the Hive Temple, carving through endless flesh horrors until her blade glowed red-hot. At the heart of the asteroid, Elias and Juno's core pushed toward the central chamber, where a new hive mind crystal was gestating. It looked like a massive chrysalis, and it pulsed. "Juno," Elias said, "you know what to do." Interface established. Uploading viral cascade. The hive mind screamed, not audibly, but across every frequency in every soldier's skull. It fought back. Juno started to unravel. "It's too much. I need more time." "You don't have it." Elias raised his arm and called in the one card they'd held back. From orbit, the Ashwing opened its spine. A single cylinder launched. It pierced the atmosphere and shattered the sky. Inside, a Titan-class fusion lance, modified from the same tech that once powered colony cores. It struck the chrysalis dead center. The world cracked. Xerxes V didn't just die. It detonated. Shrapnel, flesh, and Dominion screams echoed into space. The high birth ended before it began. The final doctrine was done. When the dust settled, fewer than half of the drop troops remained. Elias lay beneath a broken Reaver mount, bones cracked, bleeding from every hole that mattered. Kara dragged him out by the shoulder straps and slapped him until he breathed. "You good?" she growled. He coughed blood, grinned. "Never better." Navarro's voice crackled through broken comms. "Mission complete. Enemy erased. Time to bring our people home." And for the first time in years, the Dominion didn't answer, because there was no one left to answer with. They thought we'd burn out. They thought we'd break. But we are the flame that refuses to die, the fire that cleanses, the light that will never fade. Karavas' last speech before the final battle. The war had been a long and brutal symphony of fire, blood, and bone. From the ashes of Titan's fall to the shattered remnants of Thuldan, Humanity had clawed its way back from extinction. Every city razed, every planet scarred, every soul tested beyond breaking, all had led to this moment. Now, the Dominion was broken, its fleets scattered, its hives shattered, its god machines destroyed. But there was one final reckoning left. Earth, not just a planet, a symbol, a war-torn crucible where humanity had forged its unbreakable spirit. And the Dominion was gathering its last desperate forces for one last hellish onslaught, a final attempt to crush what remained and reclaim their throne by fire and annihilation. In the vastness of space, the Earth Defense Coalition's fleet assembled one last time. The battered warships, carriers, and gunships bore the scars of countless battles, but glowed with the fierce resolve of a species unwilling to be extinguished. Elias Stroud stood on the bridge of the flagship Valkyrie's Claw, his arm still healing, but his eyes burning with unyielding determination. Beside him, Caravas prepared her troops, their faces a mix of exhaustion, anger, and unshakable will. Major Ortega's final legacy echoed in their hearts. We hold the line. The Dominion's last fleet materialized beyond the asteroid belt, massive, a grotesque amalgamation of bone, metal, and living tech. Their ships moved like shadows, twisted and unnatural, feeding on the void. The final battle was at hand. The opening salvo shattered the silence of space. Plasma cannons screamed, energy blades flared, and the void echoed with the sound of relentless combat. Human pilots danced between debris fields and energy storms, weaving through a deadly ballet with the ferocity only desperation could summon. The Dominion fought with feral rage, unwilling to accept defeat. Kara led the spearhead assault, tearing through enemy formations with her hellsteel blade glowing red-hot from plasma charge. She fought close quarters in the corridors of a Dominion dreadnought, her team cutting through Reaver monstrosities with surgical precision. Each step forward was soaked in blood and grit. Her voice rang clear over the comms. "We are the fire that will consume them." Elias coordinated the fleet's maneuvers, issuing orders with calm precision despite the chaos. Amid the swirling maelstrom, a massive Dominion flagship, a relic from the earliest Hive Wars, emerged, its dark hull bristling with weapons and a pulsating core that threatened to unravel space-time itself. It was the Heartbreaker. The Heartbreaker unleashed a weapon never seen before, a wave of gravitational distortion that tore through human ships like paper. Fighters were crushed. Capital ships spun helplessly. The fleet faltered. Elias made a split-second decision. He ordered the Valkyrie's Claw and the Ashwing to break formation and engage the Heartbreaker directly, drawing fire to buy time for the rest of the fleet to regroup. It was a gamble, one that could cost everything. The Claw and Ashwing raced toward the Heartbreaker, dodging waves of energy and collapsing star fragments. The battle was brutal and unforgiving. Elias piloted the Claw through barrages of plasma and debris, while Juno's AI fragment worked overtime, hacking Dominion fire systems and deploying countermeasures. Inside the Claw, Elias led a boarding party onto the Heartbreaker. They fought through corridors twisting in impossible geometries, battling Reaver hybrids and corrupted tech constructs. The air was thick with ozone and the metallic scent of blood. Meanwhile, Kara and her team penetrated the Heartbreaker's core. They planted charges designed to disrupt the gravitational weapon and sever its power. The countdown began. Seconds ticked by like hours. The Heartbreaker's core began to destabilize. The gravitational waves faltered. But the Dominion unleashed their final weapon, a swarm of suicide Reaver drones. The corridors exploded into chaos. Kara fought through the swarm, her blade blazing. She reached the core's power nexus and detonated the charges. The Heartbreaker shuddered. Elias and the boarding party made their way to the bridge as the ship started collapsing. They were cut off, trapped. Navarro's voice crackled through the comms. "Eject. Get clear. We're breaking formation." Kara and Elias shared a look, one of fierce determination and unspoken promise. They activated emergency teleporters. The Heartbreaker exploded in a cascade of fire and debris. The gravitational waves collapsed. The fleet regained control. The Dominion was defeated. Back on Earth, survivors watched the final signals flood in. The war was over. Kara addressed the fleet and the world. "We are the fire that burns away fear. We are the light that never dies. We are humanity, and we will never be broken." The stars were theirs. Humanity had reclaimed its future.